Hello. Hi. Um, Hi,
Good,
Mr. James.
good morning. My apologies, everyone. Traffic in New York is everything they say it is. I'm terribly sorry.
Thank you so much for joining. I think we can start the panel now.
Perfect. Again, my apologies, folks. Thanks for staying on the line here. You'd think I'd never been to New York before, but I've done this several times. My guess is maybe some of you folks could have helped me navigate this a bit better. But good morning and greetings. Welcome to Global Cleveland's fourth annual Sister Cities Conference. This is our 2022 conference, and this is the third and last day of the conference. I hope you have enjoyed what you've heard and what you participated in thus far. My name is Michael Jeans. I'm the president and CEO of Growth Ops, or Growth Opportunity Partners, and I'm the moderator for today's Global Entrepreneurship Residence, or as you will hear us refer to it, GEIR panel. Very quickly, Growth Ops is a small business advisory organization. We're a community financial institution. We focus on communities that are often underserved, but we want to benefit the overall community. We have a particular focus on clean energy at this point, creating a green bank in 2020. And our immigrant community and population is incredibly important to us. We recognize the value in having diverse voices at the table, and the success of immigrant entrepreneurs has been stated and established. So this is a topic that is near and dear to us. And so I wanted to be sure to let you know that up front. If you see me looking to my left, it's because I have my notes here. I'm better scripted. No one wants me to go off script. So I'll stick to these if that's okay with you. It's also important that, as I shared, our immigrant community is important to me. And obviously those of us who are rallied around this call, our sponsors have a shared sense of importance for this work and this community as well. And so I'd like to highlight those sponsors as Eaton Corporation, Swagelok, Cleveland Hungarian Development Panel, the University of Akron, Rotary Club of Cleveland, Lithuanian American Community, the Cleveland chapter, Slovenian Museum and Archives, the City of Cleveland, and the Cleveland Public Library. Today we have several panelists gathered to discuss the GEIR program and the immigrant entrepreneur ecosystem in the US. I'd like to introduce our panelists to you, but I think you've heard enough of my voice for the moment. So first up, Craig, if you could introduce yourself and share a little bit about the work that you're doing. Craig will be followed by Bala.
Hi, everyone. Craig Montori. Great to be here today. I'm the co-founder and outgoing executive director of Global EIR. We've gone through a number of different namings and acronyms over the years. Previously, I was an advocate for the startup visa, a bit of a lobbyist, a bit of a community organizer, a bit of a just cheerleader of the early stage international entrepreneur community. My background is I was a startup founder in Silicon Valley in the 2010, 2011 period, and just really excited about solving this problem for both the immigrant entrepreneur and cities that see an economic development opportunity around innovation, American job creation, attracting venture capital for the 21st century, and figuring out how to take advantage of all of the communities that want to be there to benefit the world. And really excited by this panel and to have a great conversation about what the program is, how it works, and how it can be successful. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Craig. And Bala, could you share your title, role, and a bit of your background, please?
Of course. Good morning. So my name is Bala Sundaram. I'm a professor of physics and also the vice provost for research and dean of graduate studies here at University of Massachusetts at Boston. For those of you who are not aware, University of Massachusetts at Boston is the only public university in a city that's full of universities and colleges. And among the entities under my charge is a incubator space, which is called the Venture Development Center, that was set up in 2009. And that became the context with assistance from a state agency in 2014 for the adoption of the GEIR program on our campus. And it's been a very robust program. We've had great success. And as I think you'll hear over the course of this discussion in the panel, it's actually integrated really well with the mission and activities of our faculty and students, while at the same time promoting entrepreneurial aspirations, at least among both these communities. So it's been beneficial in many, many ways. And of course, from the standpoint of the Commonwealth, it has helped take startups and move them to the next level, and in many cases, much larger entities with time. So
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bala. Next up, we have Tamina and then Ernestine.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I am Tamina Watson. I am an immigration attorney, founder of Watson Immigration Law in Seattle, Washington. I'm also a podcaster with a podcast named The Startup Visa, and I've written a book called The Startup Visa as well. I'm here because I have been an incredible activist on the issue, and I'm very proud and honored to say that Craig and I have been on this journey together for over a decade. We met when the Startup Visa bill was included in the Comprehensive Immigration Reform Bill many years ago, and since then we've been doing this hand in hand. So I'm very grateful to be here because I represent a lot of startup founders, entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and immigration, of course, is one of the biggest issues and challenges that people face. And because of all the work I've done, I'm very grateful to say that Business Insider had named me as one of the top American immigration lawyers to help tech startup founders. So thank you for having me. This conversation is very important, and a big shout out to Joe and Nancy and Supriya at Global Cleveland, because this issue needs to be lifted up, and they're doing it. So thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you, Tamina. And lastly, Ernestine.
Thank you all for having me here, and I'm very excited to be a part of this panel. My name is Ernestine Lyons. I'm with Global Detroit, and I'm the Global Detroit Entrepreneur in Residence Program Manager. And my background, I come from a world of international, love of all things international. International relations is my background, and I consider myself an amateur polyglot. I love languages, and then also there's policy side of things. I was a former elected official in the Detroit, Michigan legislature, and immigration and immigration reform has always been near and dear to my heart. And so also working in the small business entrepreneurial ecosystem that exists in Detroit, I have helped to foster and develop business ideas and help entrepreneurs and startups find their niche and grow. More about the global EIR programs and the ones that exist in Detroit and all over the country.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you all for your introductions and sharing that with us. Craig, I'd like to start with you. So you've been entrenched in the immigrant entrepreneurs work, and I'd like to know and maybe share with the group, how would you describe the current environment for the immigrant entrepreneur in the United States? And specifically, is it a cultivating environment? Where might it not be as cultivating as it could be?
Well, I mean, I'd say there's never been more interest in engaging the immigrant entrepreneur community, really from all levels of governance, nonprofits, private sector. People are more excited than ever that this is a community that's ready to launch their businesses, to grow their companies, seek product market fit, and the entrepreneurship ecosystem, I think, has been never bolder. And there's an awareness that immigrants in particular have additional needs, that there's the visa, obviously, but then there's the question of where is there both product market fit, but founder community fit as well. And a lot of cities are looking at the opportunity and saying, okay, maybe you went to school here for 4+ years. Maybe you're an undergrad, maybe you're a grad. You have a social network here. You have a community that is cheering you on. And while you could leave to Silicon Valley, to New York, to Boston, like so many of our native-born folks, there's plenty of reason that if we're able to offer the visa category, the visa pathway, then you really have a lot of reason to stay here. Maybe it's an investor, maybe it's a mentor, a professor who, you know, is supporting your entrepreneurship exploration. So while we have not, unfortunately, seen a shift at the federal level in terms of welcoming policies for the immigrant entrepreneur, at the local level and from the private sector, I think there's more opportunity and excitement than ever before. And you know, in terms of cultivation, between organizations like Startup Weekend, like On Deck, like Day One, there's more welcoming pathways to entrepreneurship when you can have that first light bulb moment and say, okay, I can create my own business rather than working for someone. And uniquely as an entrepreneur, you very quickly run into, but what's the visa pathway for that? There's a visa pathway to work for someone. There's a visa pathway to have your own capital to invest in others, but to raise money yourself, to be your own employer, it's tricky. And so that's where these communities that are getting more experience in supporting immigrant entrepreneurs is so critical and so important in terms of cultivating even the opportunity to become an entrepreneur in the first place.
So Tamina, this is the space that you wholly occupy, right? So your clients come to you when they need you most. So what are you hearing from your clients? They're seeking counsel and they're going to an immigration attorney because they don't have answers to some of the very things that Craig just shared. So whether it's the startup visa or other legal barriers, what are you hearing from them and how are you helping them navigate that?
Well, first of all, I mean, Craig put it so well that, you know, the barrier does become immigration when they have that light bulb moment. I live immigration day in, day out, you know, and there are just so many problems. But when it comes to entrepreneurs, the problems are very unique. We do not have a startup visa. And what we don't also have is a way to address the modern way of practicing business. The laws that we have are from 1990s. It was first 1950. There was some amendments in the 60s, and then 1990 is where we have the final changes, where we have the visa categories that exist, including the H-1B program. So when entrepreneurs come along to me and they've either, you know, coming out of school maybe because there's a very large international student population that gets into cohorts and they are creating amazing solutions to chronic problems, they need that pathway. And so we're left with this existing visa system, and it's very much pushing a square peg in a round hole most of the time. Sometimes you can help the people, the entrepreneurs. Oftentimes you cannot. It really depends. So what happens to the entrepreneurs is more and more, just as Craig mentioned, that there is so much interest in immigrant entrepreneurs. Every country is realizing that. It's not just America. In America, it's the private investors, it's the community that's understanding it, but the federal government is really not doing anything. And as a result, when Canada rolls out a red carpet, the entrepreneurs then find an easier pathway out to Canada or other countries. So when I see entrepreneurs, I do the best I can to find the visa category that works for them. But the reason Global EIR exists is because there really isn't a pathway, and the program is very unique in using existing visa categories to serve that need.
So Bala, we're hearing that there's Fed policy that's missing. We heard that from Craig. We just heard that from Tamina. Tamina shares a bit of a different layer, which is so much of the talent is coming from our colleges and our universities, but without the cover at the Fed level. Bala, this might be a good time to explain the GEIR program. And what's the role that colleges and universities can play? What makes this model effective?
Okay, so the GEIR program, and certainly starting off with the visa support aspect of it, in my mind, in some sense, is almost like an applied. I hate to say postdoctoral because that's only one degree, but it could be earlier degrees. But somebody who's got an advanced degree is translated into an application and is interested in incubating that in a startup. And for the universities, what it does, especially ones like ours, it allows us to supplement in some cases support structures for our own students and faculty. So let me give you a concrete example. One of our GEIRs a few years ago happened to have a background in aerospace engineering. That is something which we don't have on our campus. However, there are students in our engineering, undergraduate students in our engineering, who are interested in that area, would like to do this as a graduate career. And this Global Entrepreneur in Residence actually assisted a group of students with putting together a project, realizing the project, and applying for a NASA competition in which they came in second. So that would be it's supplemental instruction of sorts, which is being provided in this case by the entrepreneur. And this is precisely the framework whereby the university, by supporting that Global Entrepreneur's application, supports both the startup component of their life as well as embedding them in the university's mission, which is to provide the broadest and most current form of education and career opportunities for our students. So that is one clear example of benefits that colleges and universities can derive from this. The second piece of it, which we've started doing more of in recent years, as I said, we started in 2014 and we've learned lessons along the way. And one of the things that we've done more recently, you can see the building behind me is our integrated science complex. It actually houses many of our STEM labs, which quite often have specialized pieces of equipment that have capacity. These specialized pieces of equipment quite often are useful for startups, which typically can't afford to or don't have access to this equipment. So, but through our GEIR program, we match campus activities, faculty research interests, student training with the needs of the entrepreneurs. So in fact, we're actually providing them with structures that can promote the success of the companies that they're incubating. So it goes well beyond just a visa support, or we're actually providing them with a platform to move their companies to the next level and be eligible or be able to advocate for funds to scale up.
Sure. So Bala, if I'm hearing now the three of you correctly, it seems to me that if we had better Fed policy, if we had better adoption by the federal government, by a corporate community, and the work that's happening on the college campus, that this could be a brain gain scenario, that we could actually retain the talent that's at the universities. Is that correct? Yes,
I believe that is correct. And it actually goes one step, I think I mentioned this briefly in my introduction. Many of these interactions actually promote entrepreneurial activity among our students and our faculty as well. So for example, when the GEIRs interface with our faculty in these specialized facilities, they work together quite often, and because by interacting with the faculty, they get more than just a piece of equipment, they get expertise, and that expertise can be mutually beneficial. And so the hope is that there'll be additional things like additional IP and commercial ventures that'll result from this interaction.
Got it. That makes so much sense. And so I'm moving to you, Ernestine. Coming from New York, the program lead in New York, your boots on the ground, right? And a place I love fondly. I spent my Detroit. I'm
Detroit. And I do have
Detroit.
to say, right now in Detroit, it is snowing, and I'm very excited about that.
All right.
But Detroit is very unique in the fact that we actually went through America's largest municipal bankruptcy, and Detroit and Michigan as a whole has sort of, been hit hard by the recession, in addition to national factors that, we have a retiring and aging workforce nationally. And I know that for my peers across the country, this is a problem with, not necessarily having the option to replenish that workforce. And I think that that's where immigrants come in and they make the biggest impact. And, statistics show that immigrants are going to be twice as likely to form companies as their American-born counterparts. And so therefore, you have a unique opportunity for folks with high growth, high scale, high skill kind of talent. And, they're coming to Detroit, and here at Global Detroit, we handle a lot of that talent coming in and, to the universities, and we're able to help them to, gain the soft skills that they need to be more marketable to employers. But what I do with the Global EIR program is really, it's important for Detroit, and we've got the automotive industry, and you've got folks who are coming here with these, advanced degrees. And, we offer them an opportunity to, grow their companies and a pathway to remaining in the US, with that H-1B visa through the partnership with the universities, because they have this uncapped visa, H-1B visa potential. And so, we have in Global Detroit, we have two new partnerships as of this year with major universities, both based in Detroit. And, so we are seeing that we currently have a, plethora of applicants and folks who are in our pipeline who are excited about, being global EIR and creative. They already have, minimum viable products, and they're ready to go. But, our program is so popular that we don't necessarily have enough university partners. So we have a plethora of applicants and a dearth of partners to place them. And so, it's very inspiring also working with folks who are so talented and who choose to make not only they want to make the US home, but they want to grow in Michigan, and they want to make Detroit home. And I think that, this is a really crucial, element where we're bringing this three-way intersection of entrepreneurship, business development, and of course, immigrant inclusion, and then acknowledging the impact of immigrants. And so I think that Detroit is definitely benefiting from talent across the board, but particularly in entrepreneurship, because this is a space where you've got, students who tend to go on and form Fortune 500 companies. And, they have this high percentage of, just really being determined to launch, grow, and scale companies at a scale in which we're not necessarily seeing from the American-born counterparts. And so we're more than happy to be able to facilitate that, and even help those partners, those university partners, navigate that immigration process, because it can be very daunting. And I know that the challenge is hand-holding for them, and to show them that, okay, well, this is, really the impact of what you're doing. And we have so many successful companies who have come through our program, and we've only been around for a short while, but we're definitely excited about the future and the possibilities there.
Your excitement and your compassion just come screaming through the camera here. And I think that's part of it, right? This isn't a job for any of you. This is what you get up to do every day because you enjoy it and you see the value in it. And that's what happens on the ground creates that messaging, right? To the extent people know, the immigrant community knows, you're welcome here. And this community works because of your presence. is incredibly important. And so to hear that this is part of the formulaic of the comeback of Detroit is incredibly exciting. So thank you for your work there. Tamina, I'm going to come back to you. So we've talked about how the GEIR works, how it interfaces at the collegiate level, and then what happens on the ground and how it improves community. You mentioned some of the gaps at the federal level. So what are you seeing from an outlook perspective, from an appetite perspective in the administration that would suggest expansion of these kinds of programs? And if you're not seeing it, what is it that you would like to see?
Well, first of all, I want to give a big shout out to Global Detroit, to Steve and Ijan and Ernestine, because what they are doing is incredibly important to watch and learn from. Detroit had been in the news for so long about the financial destruction it was going through. And this model, this work that they're doing is precisely what every city, every state should be looking at. So thank you for the work that you guys are doing and lifting up the issue. I want to talk about a little bit of the mechanics before I talk about what's missing, because anybody watching will be still sort of wondering what this is. The H-1B visa is one of the most popular visas that we have in the alphabet soup, so to speak, in the immigration system in the United States. It's for somebody who has a minimum of a degree, the job requires a degree, and there's an employer who will sponsor with a minimum salary for that particular type of job. So 3 very important components. And if a big corporation were trying to file this application, they'd have to file it once a year in sort of March, April time, where there is a lottery that happens. And the lottery is for the annual quota of 85,000 visas, of which 20,000 are set aside for people with a master's degree from a United States school, credited school. And that happens once a year. If you win the lottery, you start working in October of any given fiscal year. This particular year in 2022, the government received almost 500,000 applications. That means that the people who are applying have very small chances of being selected. The previous highest number was about 350,000, I'd say, but because there were various systemic changes, there's more increased applications that went in this year. But that means the entrepreneur that Bala mentions, that Ernestine mentions, that Craig mentions, they now have lesser chances of being selected. What do they do? Why Bala's presence and statements were very important is because universities are where entrepreneurs are essentially hatching. They're coming into being, but also universities do not have a cap. They're not in the quota. They can be outside of that. And that has always been the case because the law says universities and organizations that are providing training towards Americans, they can be outside of this quota. So Bala's given this best example of what students who are not entrepreneurs in the program themselves were learning from the entrepreneur in the program, who was learning that training and becoming a NASA winner. And that example is just so brilliant because that is what can happen. So what is not happening is that the federal government is not recognizing the potential that entrepreneurs bring to America. You know, there are many statistics and reports that show immigrant founders have created 55% of the billion-dollar companies in America, and 2/3 of billion-dollar companies were founded by immigrants or children of immigrants. Immigrants are hardworking. They will make their home wherever they can. And so what we're seeing right now is that the startup visa model, particularly during the pandemic, it was already trending, but particularly in the pandemic, people realized that, wow, you know, you can work anywhere and you can bring the talent here. So every month, every few days, the news comes out that another country has added the startup visa program. But Canada, in 2010, they took our bill, because we have had bills since 2010. They took our bill, and Craig and I actually even met the people who are taking our bill, and they made it into their own program. And it is now one of the premier countries and programs that people go to. And so what is happening is America is losing out right before our eyes, losing out. And if the federal government doesn't recognize that and use immigration as a tool for economic prosperity, we will continue to lose out, and it will become evident in the years to come. So right this moment, immigration needs to be looked upon as a tool for economic prosperity, not just for entrepreneurs, for every industry suffering from labor shortage. And so all of those things are very, very important for the federal government to take into account.
You know,
Craig
Tamina,
had
this
something.
is really fascinating because you're tying in some of the rhetoric, if you will, around making America great again. And then there's this simple piece of the equation that we could execute on, and we're not doing that. So we've got the talent at our colleges and universities. They are contributing to their communities at a business level, and therefore at a tax contribution level as well. But we're not fully activating this pool of talent. And so it's stifling our ability to be the country that we can be while we watch others do exactly that. Craig, you wanted to weigh in on this conversation as well.
Yeah, just to complement what Tamina was saying. So in 2014, as Tamina had mentioned in her introduction, in the Comprehensive Immigration Reform Bill, the Senate version had a wonderful startup visa. Then about 3 or 4 months ago, a bill passed called the CHIPS Act to encourage and incentivize onshoring and reshoring of American jobs in the semiconductor industry. That bill also included a large investment in regional innovation capacity and included a great startup visa bill in the House version, which was called America Competes. That bill, unfortunately, was slimmed down into the current CHIPS Act that did not include the startup visa. But you can see at the federal level that the legislation remains very attractive, continues to have a lot of support. But unfortunately, we have not yet been able to get it over the top. I will note, however, that its inclusion in America Competes demonstrates that it's an unusual immigration provision. That in many ways, this is much more about economic development and innovation as much as it is about immigration. That because this is about American jobs as well as the opportunity of the immigrant to take root here from the purpose of entrepreneurship, it has a much broader base of support than you might expect. That's the one thing I'll say. And then the second is I'd like to hand over to Bala if you have the latest stats from the University of Massachusetts in Boston GEIR program. I believe even a couple years ago, it was demonstrated that several $100 millions of private capital have been raised. So I'm intrigued, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I would be intrigued to hear those latest impact numbers demonstrating, at the federal level, this is what one program can do at this level of scale. Let 1,000 programs bloom.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Craig. And I think if I remember the number right, when we did the calculation last, it was around 1.2 billion, and with over 2,500 jobs created and nearly 2,000 students, coming back to the point that I made about providing additional, in this case, it's experiential learning actually for students, were benefited from this. And so, and actually we've taken these statistics to heart because one of the things we did actually was we brought in a serial entrepreneur who himself is an immigrant entrepreneur, who is actually serving as a consultant, looking at the structure of our incubator space, looking at the structure of our GEIR program, and see what else we can offer to make it more successful. So just to give one example, next week on Wednesday, an agency called Mass Ventures is going to be coming to the VDC, meeting with all the global entrepreneurs and residents and others, including faculty who have entrepreneurial inclinations, and talking to them about how to attract VC and how to put together an effective pitch? And also what kinds of sectors? So for example, in the Commonwealth, the blue tech sector is certainly one that's expanding. So that's something where we anticipate getting more applications for our GEIR program from that particular sector. And quantum information, which is related to the CHIPS one, is another one. So
yeah.
So yeah, so I think the scope for expansion is very much there.
Thank you, Bala. I'm going to take just a brief moment to let our viewers and listeners know that we will be segueing into Q&A. So I hope you're thinking about questions that you may have for this esteemed panel. But I'd like to turn this back to Ernestine. And so as we think about the word global, it suggests that there's a greater likelihood of diversity, of equity, both inclusion as well as belonging requires a sense of intentionality. And I think we're hearing that in the discussion today. How should cities and regions, how should communities be thinking about GEIR to spur economic development, economic growth, and economic opportunity? Because they're clearly connecting dots here.
Well, that's a great question, Michael. And I do know that, for the most part, when you are integrating new populations into society, especially places that have experienced population decline, you're definitely enriching, the current, setting that you have there, and you're adding you're adding skills, you're adding talent, you're adding culture. And I think that with Global Detroit, we're doing a lot of the DEIB work, and we're being cognizant of all aspects of, just inclusion. And so that means making sure that, immigrants from different parts of the world, when they come here, they're having different experiences, whether it's a H-1B who's coming from India, and they're on an H-1B and they're coming here from India with a, master's degree in biomedical engineering, or it's the refugee and the asylum seekers who are, coming here and maybe in Hamtramck, which is a city within the city of Detroit, they are starting small businesses like grocery stores that specialize in ethnic foods. And so, all of this creates a different understanding of the larger picture of contributing to, the American economy. And particularly in Detroit, it really enhances who we are. We benefit from having folks come to the US and work in the automotive industry with, these advanced mechanical degrees. And we also benefit from, having portions of our population who have, left the city of Detroit. Detroit was, the heart of the auto industry, and it still is, but we've experienced a lot of population decline in the city of Detroit, and it's like one of the country's largest, cities. But in terms of population, we once had 1 million people, and now we're, about the population, same size as the population of the state of Wyoming. And it's just, that's something that we think that bringing in, this immigrant talent is going to really enhance, the experience that not only locals get to experience Vietnamese food and experience, all of the great cultural things that makes us all global citizens, but it's also, bringing in, the entrepreneurs, the folks who are going to start those businesses, and, the folks who already have a minimum viable product, and maybe they're working on the side of, a job that they already have, and they want to be able to make Michigan home. And so I think that we look at DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Nationally, I think everyone is looking at this, as, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, and we're looking at the melting pot that we are. And we're really examining what we should be celebrating about each other. And I think this is the movement that was brought out of 2020 with the racial awakening. And, it's more about being cognizant of each other's, past, present, and what makes each other unique. And now we're celebrating each other. We're learning more about each other. And it's that, integration through inclusion and equity, because equity isn't just everybody having the same thing. It's everybody having the thing that serves them where they are. And I think that through that lens, it's really important to make sure that we're being that champion. And I think that Global Detroit has definitely been doing the work in the ecosystem and in the Detroit area. And you know, it's definitely been shown through a lot of the really great developments. We've just released OPT data, and we've, you know, our lieutenant governor has, you know, been a very big champion here in Michigan of, you know, the global EIR program, our what we call global talent retention program. And we are, you know, definitely doing the work, and the state is recognizing and giving funding to do more of that work. And so I think that it's all woven together when you're looking at the cultural lens and the cultural blending. You know, we're truly living in a more globalized world. We're becoming even more diverse. We're looking at the browning of America, and you know, so it's really important to, you know, just make sure that we're continuing to give more than just lip service, you know, across the country.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Ernestine. I'd like to remind folks that, or let you know that the Q&A feature is open. And so if you have any questions for the panel, feel free to type those in. Tamina, any thoughts from you on how communities could and should be thinking about this? And the definition of community is everything from local and regional government to the business owner to the corporate executive, and of course then the citizen or the resident.
You know, I have been an activist and advocate for immigration reform for as long as I've been practicing. And, you know, it's immigration is everything, whether it's the asylum or refugee, or it's the entrepreneur, or everybody in between. Community is a huge part of every single discussion. And we saw that with the previous administration's Muslim ban, to see how the communities came together. We saw that with communities coming together when separation of parents and children happened. We saw communities come together when Afghan nationals needed assistance. And we saw that with Ukraine. And all of these global events have a local impact too, because we are always, as Americans, we are actually big-hearted people. You know, as a community, we are big-hearted people. And we're always trying to be helpful to others. But these are our friends and families and neighbors who are affected through war-torn issues, or through climate change issues. These are the problems that entrepreneurs are also trying to solve. So Ernestine said it so well, that these are all woven together. And immigration is a big part of what we need to fix. When you think about entrepreneurs, they're in the healthcare industry, they are in the automotive industry, they are in the climate change industry, they are in everything that you can think of. And when we think about America in the 1990s, when the laws were actually written, think about that day and think about today. We're a globalized community now. So the word community is so much more than just what you think about your neighbors and your little local area. We are a global community at this point, and we need to have ways in which we can all interact and serve each other, because when we serve each other, we all rise. Bala, the floor, I wanted to hand over to you, because I think you have something to share on that.
I just wanted to add to what you and Ernestine both said. And I said that I was going to say that colleges and universities are a natural environment for some of this activity, just because they already are the global community that everyone's been talking about. If you look at, I mean, our campus is the third most diverse in the country. And, you know, a number of languages spoken on campus. We have international students and students from all different walks of America. So it is already that melting pot where this fits in quite naturally.
And I just want to add to that, the most Americans actually want to see immigration reform. has been poll after poll after poll of immigration reform being necessary. Our education system, I'm a mother of a 10 and 12-year-old, and COVID came along, and, every school was shut down. It really had a spotlight on what teachers do for this country, what the education system is, lacking or needing even more. And if it weren't for Zoom, even now, we wouldn't be able to talk. But how could our students, our children, could have gone to school? How could how could the doctors have seen their patients? Zoom came from the invention of a Chinese immigrant. When we had our Moderna or other vaccines, they came from immigrant entrepreneurs, immigrant founders, immigrant scientists. Whichever aspect of your life you look at, immigrants have been making an impact on America since day one. So it's time to recognize that, and it's time to harness it even more to take us into the next century.
Tamina, I'm so glad you mentioned the nature of global community, and you shared that most Americans actually want immigration reform. I think it is so important for our immigrant listeners to hear that and to know that. We've got a disconnect between our federal government and how we govern, and the majority of Americans. No one wants to feel like space is being forced or carved out to accept. And so I'm glad you mentioned that. America wants more immigration because America was founded on immigration. America grew at each stage through immigrant contributions. Our governance needs to catch up. We're down to the last few minutes. And so I'll ask each of you maybe to take one minute, if you could. What could be the brightest future for immigrant entrepreneurs, and why? And I'll start with you, Craig.
Well, I mean, the one takeaway I'll give you is that, the universities play a critical role in this, but so too do economic development agencies, do innovation districts, and a variety of critical ecosystem leaders throughout the innovation space. And in some ways, it's about raising the flag, doing the moral call to action. And in some cases, it's leveraging relationships with philanthropies and securing the resources to make more spots open to enable the soft landing of immigrant entrepreneurs locally. Perhaps it's sister city relationships. So leaving you all with my own call to action that we need your help. We need your help to create these new realities on the ground that will ultimately move the needle on federal action. The best line I've heard from a mentor of mine, he said, change the reality and the politics will race to catch up. And if we demonstrate that immigrants are solving the visa problem on their own, but at a limited scale, and that the opportunity, to put it in startup terms, the total addressable market is just so much bigger than what we've even managed to carve out so far, then I think it's inevitable that the federal level will follow behind the successes of programs like Global EIR and leaders here in Cleveland.
Great. Thank you, Craig. Ernestine.
Well, I think that it's really, as Tahmina says so many times, it's really the startup visa, it's immigration reform. I think that those are the crucial things that we're going to need to move the needle forward because, as I mentioned, we're in population decline, we have an aging population, and, the answer to that historically has been an influx of new Americans and, an influx of folks who are going to come with a different mentality and want to, work towards, just building things and starting innovative ideas, as Tahmina said, Zoom's founder is Chinese immigrant. And so, bringing these ideas to the United States and, I think that even having more ecosystem support, because in Michigan, we're the only people, Global Detroit, we're the only ones doing this kind of work. And so I think that it would also behoove the universities to support the international students that they have and nudge them towards entrepreneurship if they see that there's a budding, sort of idea, and, help the innovators, be pushed towards entrepreneurship. And so I think that, having that support, and the knowledge that these are, really impactful programs, and, that immigration is the bloodline and the heart of, what happens to spur American change and to spur the economy historically. And so I think that having that university support, having ecosystem support, and then having that immigration reform is definitely important.
Indeed. We're down to our countdown here, Bala. If you could share your reaction.
I think from a university perspective, one of the things, certainly on our campus, we are, a lot of our scholarship and research on our campus is community engaged work. And so this is something, we're trying to integrate with the entrepreneurial inclinations as well. And I think programs like the GEIR program, as I mentioned multiple times, are really critical to that growth. And for us right now, actually, the post-pandemic has actually ramped our way back to the numbers that we had pre-pandemic, because there was a decline over this period. So, and judging from the number of applications that we get, the opportunity is very much there. So,
thank you. And Tamina.
Well, thank you. I know you're down to the wire, so I'm going to be very quick here. I have 3 calls to action for people. Number 1, read my book, The Startup Visa. It's so important for you to learn the history of what immigrant entrepreneurs have done, what the immigration system is, what needs to be changed, and how you can be an advocate. So learning these issues, and just, I mentioned Bose. I think he went to, he was in Massachusetts. He's an immigrant, but nobody knows that the Bose headset comes from somebody who's an immigrant. It's the book, the information within it is very, very important. Number 2, become an advocate. This education, this information then gives you the information you need to become a voice for the issue. And then, I could talk up forever and give you more calls to action, but the last one would be, take this video. Thank you again to Global Cleveland and Global Detroit and Global EIR for recognizing how to do this. Take this video and then send it to your friends, to anybody in the ecosystem, to the universities, because that is how this program can grow. And until we get a startup visa, until we get an immigration reform fit for the next century, we have to work within the system. And this video that is going to be published after our chat needs to become a platform, a voice for the next university to join.
Outstanding. Thank you. And thanks to each of our panelists for this invigorating conversation and discussion today. 3 things we just heard: the startup visa, the book, advocate, and revisit this video and share this video along with your friends, your colleagues, and others. I'd like to once again thank our sponsors: Eaton Corporation, Swagelok, Cleveland Hungarian Development Panel, the University of Akron, the Rotary Club of Cleveland, Lithuanian American Community, the Cleveland chapter, Slovenian Museum and Archives, the City of Cleveland, Cleveland Public Library, and I would absolutely like to thank Global Cleveland for being unwavering in its commitment to the issues of immigration, the issues for immigrants, and the issues for our broader community that can be solved by better integration of the aforementioned. So Joe Semperman and Supriya and team, thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you, panelists, to what you're doing in your communities to make us all better at this important work, and what will ultimately not only make America great again, but will help us build back better the community that we love and we trust. Now we've got about a 30-minute break, perhaps down to 27 minutes. Your next session is going to be City Highlights, Vicenza, Italy, starting at 10:30 a.m. The delegations from our sister city, Vicenza, are here and will be presenting about the city itself. I sure hope you enjoy the next session and the rest of the conference. Don't be a stranger. We hope to see and hear from you soon. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.